This is Kurt with 5 hacking tips. Today, I'm going to cover the Bash Bunny. The Bash Bunny is like the rubber ducky that I did in a previous video. But the thing about the Bash Bunny is it actually has a Bash shell on it. So it's actually a embedded Linux system inside what appears to be a USB mass storage device. It comes with three different modes. Basically 2 different modes, 3 different switch positions. So if you have the LED on the top of the device facing you and you push it all the way to the front, that puts it in arming mode so that you can put in any of the Bash Bunny scripts that are available in the payloads file that comes with it. And I'll show you the website where there are additional payloads or updated payloads and stuff that you can download and refresh this thing. And then the other 2 switch positions are 2 different attack modes. So very back is switch 1, and then after that switch 2. And that's really handy because instead of having like 2 rubber duckies, one for OS X and the other one for Windows, and I've never really used a rubber ducky on Windows on OS X, tell you the truth, but I would use Bash Bunny on it, and it's probably much more reliable. But anyways, so what I've done is I've created a reflective DLL injection malware from my courses, my intermediate courses at Sector 7. And then I've also used some of the techniques from the Windows Evasion course at Sector 7 to bypass antivirus detection. Here, hold on. With that, without further ado, I'll go through some slides that I have available, or a slide that I have available, just to show you all the links that are out there that I'm working with, and to explain a little further. So actually, these are the folders. So the idea is when I plug this in, it will run what we call a Bash Bunny script, payload.txt file. In that payload.txt file, it'll run a couple of PowerShell commands that will refer to another PowerShell script, which I'm calling, I forgot what it is. It's like Forerunner or something like that, .ps1. But inside of that, it will take the exe file that I've created, the malware that I've created, and it will write that to a temp folder. This is like probably really hard to see from where you're looking, unless you're looking on a big screen television. But anyways, it'll write that file to the temp folder, and then it'll write a persistence file, which I think I call Fox service or something. I'm basically trying to play or masquerade kind of like I'm a particular, a certain very popular browser. But anyways, that will go into the startup file. So that's where I'll get persistence. So even if, for example, I cut off and by the way, it runs a Meterpreter payload. So I'm going to set up Metasploit as well. And I've got a couple of hacking tips related to Metasploit as well. A lot of times newbies or people that are just getting used to Metasploit don't know how to handle multiple Meterpreter sessions or how to set it up. That's like a frequent question that comes across on forums. Basically, I'll show you how to do that. And that's probably like one of the bigger tips that I'm providing today. But anyways, it'll kick off a Meterpreter session. And even if I kill the Meterpreter session and I restart Meterpreter later, it will still come back with a persistent connection coming back to my host on port 8080. So let me jump into the slides here and show you basically a couple of references that we have, like some of the links here. So there's the Bash Bunny wiki, and that it shows, what that explains a lot of like what's inside the Bash Bunny handbook, that if you pay like an extra $2 when you buy the Bash Bunny, they'll send this to you. And I recommend that. There's also an electronic version for free. So like when you buy the Bash Bunny, you go to Hack5 right now and download it. And then the other link that's like really important for this is the payloads. So if you go to the Bash Bunny payloads file or a GitHub repository, I looked at it a minute ago, and it looked like the most recent update on the payloads was like 10 days ago. So that's even newer than what I have in here. So that's highly recommended when you start on one of these projects. And then my Bash Bunny files is the next link, number 3, and those are the persistence, the Windows attack persistence scripts that I've used in this demonstration that I'm about to show you right now. Then of course there's the Hack 5 Bash Bunny purchase link. Costs about $119 or $129, something like that. And then last but not least, Sector 7 Institute. Highly recommended if you want to develop malware or understand how malware is developed in C. And I recommend that you have a little bit of understanding of C or C++ before you take the course. But it's in raw C, you're using Notepad the whole time, and you're basically using the Windows command line tools. So you're not encumbered with having to set up Microsoft Visual Studio and all of that. And the idea is low footprint using basic tools and basic command line compilers. And then the last one is the Metasploit commands. So a lot of times we use multi-handler, but we don't really know how to take on multiple sessions. And in this number 6 here on the E and F are the key ones, key instructions here. You set exit on session to false. So, if you exit a session, it doesn't exit interpreter, it doesn't stop listening. So you set that to false, and then you run, you type in the command run -jz, and then it will start the multiple session listener for Metasploit. So I'm going to pop over here, and I'll show you some of the links here. So this is basically the Bash Bunny wiki that I was talking about earlier. And then these are the Bash Bunny payloads. And right here, okay, we can see that 11 days ago it was updated, dated by 1 day there. And then these are my payloads. Another word of warning is, I live in Japan, and most of my targets are Japan for red teaming exercises and whatnot. And so there's a bit of trickery in these scripts that if you use a non-English or a non-US keyboard, you might want to take a look at, because it shows you how to use multiple keyboards without necessarily relying on the Bash Bunny. There is a language setting within Bash Bunny, but that didn't quite work. And I got the Japanese file off of the Bash Bunny payloads website or a GitHub repository, but that did not seem to work. So I used these other commands. Check it out if you need to do something like that. If you want to emulate the code, though, just look for the square brackets inside the code, and then just change that to whatever. And I put instructions in there to whatever. First of all, whatever your listening port is. If you want to use netcat, there's also some commented out sections in there where you can write over netcat if you want to use that. I purposely don't use netcat because netcat's noisy, and a lot of antivirus picks up netcat quite easy. And then last but not least, this is the Hack 5 website. Okay, so it's $119.99. And then here's the ebook that you can download for free. And then last but not least, Sector 7 Institute. The reflective DLL injection code that I used to compile this malware was from the Malware Development Intermediate class. If you're going to take the intermediate class and you're not super familiar with C, I would recommend taking the Essentials class first. In fact, I would recommend taking the Essentials first anyways, because that's a good review before you jump into DLL hooking and injection, stuff like that. And then last but not least here, there's the Windows Evasion class. And there's some of that in here as well, because with a regular RDI, I was getting detected by Bitdefender, and some things were coming up on Windows Defender. So I had to work around that. So here it goes. I'm going to show you the, first let's jump into setting up Metasploit. So right here, I've got Metasploit running already. So I'm just going to say, just like what was listed on that PowerPoint. So use multi-handler. And then I'm going to set the payload this is the payload that I created and that I embedded in this DLL that gets injected. I'm going to say Windows x64 and then reverse TCP. And then, of course, set the L host. And I'm going to switch that off while I do this, so I don't have mask. Actually, I'll set the L all the way through. So set L port, and then make that 8080. So that's what I have in the payload. And then what I want to do is what I described earlier to get the multiple sessions. And I'll set the L host at the end. But basically, to get the multiple sessions, I'm going to set exit on session. Make sure exit on. Always take notes. Important. So exit on session, not section. Spell there. Session. And then say that is false. And then before I hit run, I'm going to put in my L host. And then I'm going to clear that so we don't have to mask that part of the screen. So here we are. So I'm ready to go. And then I'm going to type run minus JZ. Is that a wrapper name or something? Okay, so now you can see my IP address. So we started a reverse session there. Reverse TCP handler through Meterpreter. And I'm just going to go here on the desktop. And I'm going to plug this thing in to the USB port. So I'm basically going from my local Windows instance, and I'm going to send a reverse shell back to this IP. So what I want to do here is I'm going to share this screen down here like this, because that's where I plug this puppy in. And it takes a second. We'll see that it's up. And eventually you'll see, there you go, the PowerShell commands through the keyboard HID recognition. And that's another thing I wanted to explain about the Bash Bunny, is that it has various modes. It's not like the rubber ducky where you're just dealing with an HID device. You can actually set it up. So, for example, in this script, it's an HID, but I also set it up as a mass storage device. And if I flip this back over, now you can see that it stored my fire-exe, the malware file, in C temp. And then it started this fire service VBS, or it stored it in the startup, and it also kicked it off. So if you look at the other screen, you can see that I've got Meterpreter session 1 open. So we basically go into here, hold on. Go into here, I hit sessions, minus L, and it shows the session that's in play right now, and sessions 1, and I'm in there. And then if I type shell, voila, you can see right there, that's my profile on the Windows machine, and I'm connecting from this remote IP. That's in a nutshell how this works. The thing about this that I want to emphasize a little bit is a lot of times when we create malware, there's, you go through, well, how am I going to do this attack? Am I going to go with a social? Am I going to go with a physical? Am I going to go with a social and like a download combination? A lot of times when you're doing a straight on social attack, you're actually relying on somebody to click something, and sometimes it doesn't work as easy, which is where these devices come in really handy, because if you can get physical access, and a lot of times for an HID device, as I emphasized when I did the rubber ducky video, is an HID device is a keyboard input device, and it's hard to block that. So what do you do outside of that? Well, there was a lot of PowerShell involved with this attack. So, you know, I mean, limit your PowerShell among your users, remove local admin privileges as much as you can. And where you have to give admin privileges and where you have to let PowerShell be used, because in some environments people may require it, like developers, then, you know, try and separate those users some way through subnetting, and then set up a SIEM alarm that goes off when people outside of that area are attempting to use PowerShell. Is one way to do it. The other way, and also, you know, this particular thing, it works as a network device. It works as a USB mass storage device. It works as, you know, a serial device. So to set up alarms around that area. Although, you know, that gets quite technical and you have to figure out how to do that. But it's kind of worth the step, because these attacks are more and more common as insider seeding, not necessarily social attacks, but where APT groups or organized groups are actually sending people in as contractors to work within organizations. These kind of attacks become more prevalent. They're a lot easier to implement. All you're doing is spending time on the malware development after you figure out how to make it work on the Bash Bunny device. That said, Bash Bunny does not work out of the box, and I mentioned that with Rubber Ducky. It does not work out of the box. You know, you have to be an engineer, as OffSec says. You have to try harder. But the thing about it is that the rewards are great, because once you get that, then the malware and Windows evasion becomes the focus, and you can just use this tool. The other thing about the Bash Bunny is you have those two switch positions. So, you know, if you walk into an environment and lo and behold, everybody's using a Mac, nobody's using a Windows machine, then you've got switch position number 2 or whatever, and you can use that as well. That is all for the Bash Bunny today. I hope you enjoyed it. And please please subscribe, and please offer your support, comments, and please suggest videos that I should make, you know, if you have questions. Thank you. Have a good day.